Are you trying to fetch data from DynamoDB using Spark and feeling stuck? You're not alone. Today, we're diving into whether Spark allows the use of Amazon Assumed Roles and STS temporary credentials for DynamoDB. I understand how frustrating it can be when you have the right tools but can't make them work together. Many developers face similar challenges when trying to integrate AWS services with Spark. Here's the specific question we're addressing today. A user wants to know if they can use AWS Assumed Roles and STS temporary credentials to access DynamoDB with Spark. They mentioned that while they can access DynamoDB using user access keys, they prefer using assumed roles for security reasons. Sound familiar? Let's explore this together. So what do we need to know? Using assumed roles and STS temporary credentials is a common practice for enhancing security when accessing AWS resources. However, the integration with Spark can be tricky, especially for services like DynamoDB. And stick around. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to set this up, and I have a bonus tip that could save you a lot of time. To begin, the user needs to set up the Spark configuration to use the temporary credentials obtained from AWS STS. This involves adding the session token to the job configuration. Next, the user should ensure that the DynamoDB input and output formats are correctly set in the job configuration. This is crucial for Spark to interact with DynamoDB. Now the user can specify the DynamoDB table name and the service endpoint. This is necessary for Spark to know which table to access. Finally, the user can run their Spark job. With the configuration set, Spark should now be able to access DynamoDB using the assumed role and temporary credentials. Fun fact, did you know that using temporary credentials can reduce the risk of credential leaks? It's a smart move for any developer working with AWS. Now let's look at the answers provided by other users. An alternative approach suggested by another user involves using the DynamoDB.custom AWS credentials provider with the STS assume role session credentials provider. This allows you to fetch temporary credentials for accessing DynamoDB with Spark. The user also created a custom wrapper around the STS assume role session credentials provider to manage the role ARN and session name. This wrapper ensures that the necessary configurations are set before use. Finally, to use this custom provider, you can set the role ARN and session name in your job conf, allowing Spark to utilize the assumed role for accessing DynamoDB. Here's the bonus tip I promised. Always ensure your roles have the least privilege necessary. This practice not only enhances security, but also simplifies troubleshooting. And there you have it. You can indeed use AWS assumed roles and STS temporary credentials with Spark to access DynamoDB. If you found this video helpful, please subscribe for more tips and tricks.